Buenos dias, and my apologies that I unfortunately cannot speak Spanish, and I must deliver this presentation in English, and I hope that you can all understand. I am very excited to be here. I'm very excited by the innovation that is already happening in Tijuana and the opportunity to celebrate it through this event. Plantronics, for those of you who don't know, has been a global leader in headsets. We invented the lightweight headset nearly 50 years ago. We will be celebrating our 50th anniversary in the early part of next year. It perhaps seems like a funny thing to talk about voice communications in this digital era, but I think things are circling around, and I want to talk a little bit about how I think innovation and unified communications are fitting together in a very powerful way as it relates to Plantronics' future. I want to start out with a photo that you may find memorable in terms of not just what was said, but how it was said. Perhaps you remember this man, and perhaps you remember the dream that he had. I want to share with you a few other words that I think have been said very powerfully by people over time. Of course, I'm hoping the video will work.
In the name of peace, democracy and freedom for all, I stand here before you, not as a prophet, but as a humble servant of you, the people.
Men will still say, this was their finest hour.
My fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
In the brief span of 30-odd years, the world has seen an inventor's dream, first materialized by the Wright brothers at Kitty Hawk, become an everyday actuality.
I think that all of us are looking for a place under the sun. By that I mean for a union that we can belong as farm workers, was going to be built by farm workers, and it's going to be for farm workers.
Viva Mexico! Viva Mexico!
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Some of those speeches may have touched you. I know I remember some of those forever. The last one by Neil Armstrong was one that was spoken with a Plantronics headset, and it's a special memory for us as a result. You know, this is a photo you see of a guy who is being protected. They're actually installing these now because people are spending so much time on texts and with Twitters and so forth that people are actually walking into poles, okay? And you may think, you know, my gosh, why in the world am I talking about voice? Those of us who have children know that they don't even make phone calls anymore. All they do is SMS and text their friends all the time. But I want to give you a little perspective on the evolution that we see that's happened over time and how that has changed things. If we go and we look at the agricultural age, which occurred for a very long period of time, we had a slow, steady increase in the standard of living. And as we started to mechanize that and then use those machines, all of a sudden we saw the industrial age bloom across much of the developed world. And the funny thing is that lasted for about 200 years, and during that time there was about a 10 times increase in the standard of living per person around the globe. In the last 50 years or so, we transitioned to the information age, and there was about a 20 times increase from where we had been in the industrial age in the standard of living per person. Of course, the tools transitioned from machines to computers, And the type of work environment transition from the factory floor into the office, still a fairly unattractive environment when you look at it, kind of sterile. We believe that we're about to go through a new transition, one that we call a transition to the conceptual age. Those of you who were able to hear some of the speakers earlier today, your economics minister, Calderon, they talked about the migration that we are having as we go from fear to hope. And at the end of the day, that's part of the promise, if you will, that comes with the innovation age. You know, when you look at the global market in which we all compete, directly or indirectly as individuals or businesses, what we are seeing more and more is everyone can access low-cost. I don't care whether it's direct labor assembly, whether it's silicon, whether it's hardware engineering, software engineering, everybody can access that. Everybody can achieve good quality levels. If you're given a product, everybody's able to copy it. Everyone's able to achieve the same functional result. The problem really is, if that's the case, how do you create some differentiation that is meaningful? How do you create a connection, whether it's a service or a product that you're offering, to your customer that's meaningful, that's differentiated, that makes your brand last, that makes you stand out? You know, I was visiting a couple of three German auto companies a few weeks back, and they were talking about measuring the emotions of people when they get in the car, how they integrate the right smell, the right sound, the right feeling, whether or not they can measure a smile that comes in when somebody gets into that vehicle. And that is the way that people have to compete going forward. We're trying to create happiness in our products. We're trying to create a way that you communicate that makes you feel better. Everyone in a service industry is trying to create that with their customers. If I look at the evolution of the agricultural age as, you know, food sufficiency, the industrial age is about giving you the things that you need in your life. If I look at the information age as providing you with that knowledge, then the conceptual age is about taking it to the next step. It's about empathy, it's about emotion, it's about how we achieve that next level for people, because that's the level that we can now differentiate on. Those of you who've read Blue Ocean may have read a particular write-up relative to Cemex. Those of you who have not may be familiar with this company. It is a hard product category to many conventional thinkers. We sell cement. Lots of people have cement available. It looks like a commodity, okay? What's the difference between the cement that Cemex makes and the cement that somebody else makes? How sustainable is that difference? But Cemex changed the whole way people think about concrete. We had many people in Mexico who were providing parties, whether it's weddings, birthdays, other family events and celebrations to people, and that's how they were spending their money. And it was rich and it was cultural, but it was not lasting. Cemex saw an opportunity to change the way these celebrations occurred, took advantage of Patrimonio Hoy, if I pronounce it correctly, and created a vehicle by which people pooled their money and created permanent additions to their homes. They added rooms. They made it part of the dream. They made it an emotional connection to what you could do with concrete in building up your family and contributing to your community. The result was, of course, some of you will know this, Cemex wound up with much higher growth. The whole category of concrete expanded pretty significantly in Mexico. Cemex had higher profit margins. Cemex came to actually live this picture where people thought of Cemex as providing a human connection rather than a commodity in the form of concrete. That's the way a company was able to transform their business through the use of an emotional connection. If we look at the world that we are facing now, we would say it is changing, and it is changing radically. People are dealing with globally distributed teams. It's the only way to operate. If we develop a product, we make headsets, and I sell it only in a few markets, I'm not going to be very successful. The cost to develop our products is very significant. I need to sell it around the globe. People are not the same around the globe. I need to understand what the market requirement is in the UK, or Germany, or China, or India, or the United States, or Brazil, or Mexico. I need to have, therefore, teams that are all around the world. I need to have people with different competencies in different areas if I'm going to develop that right. And we're seeing this not just at Plantronics, which is not a huge company, but at almost every larger company. Increasingly, they are global. In order to compete, you need to compete around the globe. You need to have global expertise. You need to have global input. Seeing the same things. I'll go into this a little bit more. Flex working. People needing to support their family, trying to work different hours, and to accommodate the global distributed teams. If I have a team in India, I can't tell them I'm only available from 8 to 5 in the US. That's the middle of the night their time. It doesn't work out very well. So we wind up working odd hours to accommodate our lifestyle, to accommodate the work requirements. Remote working, sometimes for green initiatives, sometimes for commute, sometimes for the fact that the best talents are available in different places. But we need to empower those people. And then we have Gen Y. I'll come back to that in a second. So if you look at this chart, this is of Global 1000, so admittedly these are larger companies. But 70% have workforce that are not native English speakers. This is one of the challenges of having these distributed teams. I'll come back to that. It's a communications challenge at its core. We need to have understanding. Otherwise, we'll have globally distributed teams that aren't connected very well, and that we know will be a disaster. Remote working. We've got 90% now of large companies that have people working at least some of their time off-site. Look at that first bar on this pie chart. 50% or more of their time off-site. It's 46% in these companies. This is a huge reality. We can't just provide effective communications, effective attachment to the